From the grind to the glory, one man's journey proves that heart, hustle, and determination change the game. This is Catch as Catch Can with George Tinsley Sr., where adversity is met head-on and champions are made. Here's George.
Welcome to Catch as Catch Can. I'm George Tinsley Sr., former professional athlete, entrepreneur, author, and your host. This is a space where we sit down with leaders who face real challenges, learned real lessons, and kept moving forward.
Turning obstacles into opportunity.
Joining me today is Randy Gage, best-selling author, thought leader, and global speaker on prosperity, entrepreneurship, and personal transformation. A National Speaker Association Hall of Famer, he helps people build financial freedom, stronger leadership through mindset and personal responsibility. Welcome, Randy.
Hey, George. Thanks for bringing me in.
Hey, it's an honor to have you on the show and get to know you and talk about some of your outstanding success. This podcast is based off turning obstacles to opportunity, and my book Catch as Catch Can, which is a nice way of saying that. And so we like to feature people who have overcome and been very successful. So you have a tremendous background of things that you have done and are doing, and your new book release will definitely want you to tell us a little bit about that and how we might get it during the show here. So once again, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So let's start off by just telling us a little bit about what you're doing today. What's really hot with you today?
I'm trying to make the world more prosperous.
Wow.
It sounds like a utopian, delusional fantasy to some people, but I actually believe we will make the world more abundant. We can make the world more prosperous. And it starts with consciousness, working and reaching out to people. I don't think you do it with charity or entitlement programs. I think we do it with empowering people, with elevating the level of consciousness, or let's say helping them go from poverty consciousness to prosperity consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly I'm just teaching from my personal experience. I had a single mom who raised 3 kids by herself, knocking on doors, selling Avon. We were poor. I got into drugs and alcohol at a very early age. I was in jail for armed robbery at 15 years old. So I made a lot of bad choices in the early years, as you can see, George. But I was influenced and able to graduate that level of consciousness I have. And so today I run Breakthrough You, which is a entrepreneur accelerator program I founded back in 2005. And I write books, and I've got a podcast of my own, and I'm just trying to elevate the prosperity consciousness of the world.
Well, I think that's a tremendous objective, and wish you success with that, because we certainly need it. There are a lot of youngsters out there today, young business people getting started that have come from possibly that same type of background. Tell us a little bit about what really that's part that kind of started turning you around at the early age and looking to the more positive side. How did you get that started?
It started in that jail cell. One of the girls that I went to school with told her father, "Go visit Randy. You got to save him. He's rotting away in jail. Nobody can help him." So one day the keys jangled outside, my cell door open, and this guy walks in who I've never met. His name was Baxter. and he was a school teacher.
Mhm.
And he told me, "You don't belong here. You're capable of great things." Well, I told him he was full of, you know what? He should have slapped me into the next week, but he didn't.
Mhm.
He had generosity. And he said, "No, no, I talked to every one of your teachers. They tell me you skip school for 3 weeks straight, and then you can come in and you can ace a test. Do you know your reading comprehension level is higher than college?" I'm like, "No, I didn't know that." And of course, looking back, it turns out I'm on the spectrum, right? Autism. Well, nobody even knew what that was when I was growing up. That wasn't even a diagnosis to the mid 80s, I think. So I was autistic and didn't know what it was. I just knew, like, I know more than these teachers. Why are they wasting my time? This is so simple, so elementary, right? And I was pathologically shy, a lot of social anxiety. So I never fit in. And so I became a rebel, and then a drugs and alcohol, looking for an escape. And so this was the first guy in the world who believed in me.
Mhm.
I and you would get this, George, just from your athletic experience. I was so desperate to believe him. I believed him. And because I believed him, it was true,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
You know, we've all had some, whether it might have been sports or it might have been life, we've all had some coach, hopefully, who believed in us before we believed in ourselves even. And we accepted that. And we kind of lived off of their belief until we could develop our own.
Mhm.
And that was my case. And I didn't become a deca millionaire overnight and, you know, save the world and uh, but I gave myself a fresh start. I gave myself a chance. And I hadn't discovered all the negative programming and negative beliefs I had yet, but at least I discovered some and killed
Right.
them. And then when I was 30, I lost my business, had it seized by the IRS, and slept on the floor because I had to sell all my furniture, including my bed, you know, everything, every piece of furniture in the house. And so I learned more lessons along the way, right? I went through more experiences, but you learn from them and you realize, okay, what is the lesson here for me to learn? What do I need to change? What do I need to modify to get me to where I say I want to be?
Mhm. You know, Randy, as I listened to your message, my the my person was my seventh grade school teacher, who was the first person to believe in me and gave me the responsibility of being the I don't know if you're old enough, but the projector boy who would go around and show the reel to reel and set the machine up, and you know, if the tape broke and so forth. She gave me some accountability and responsibility that built my self-esteem, which and her and the coach the gym teacher who was also the coach. So I identify with what you're saying, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that's listening to this program, this podcast, that will certainly identify with that also. But as that happened, you mentioned your first business. How did you go from the point of when you got out of jail and you started believing in yourself? How did you go from that point to your first business?
Well, being poor was a blessing in many ways. It's a curse in many ways, of course. But one of the blessings was I learned at 10 years old if I wanted some nice jeans or nice sneakers like the cool kids were wearing in school. My
Right.
mom wasn't buying me those. Okay. I got the hand me down JC Penney jeans from my older brother. and shoes and all of that stuff. And so I learned, like, man, I'm going to rake leaves. I'm going to shovel snow. I'm going to babysit. I'm going to mow lawns. I'm going to wash cars. I'm going to deliver newspapers. I'm going to do whatever. That led to me making my way through middle school as a dope dealer, which proved me to be a pretty good entrepreneur. And I learned a lot of lessons that later made me very wealthy. Though that isn't the pathway I'm recommending for anybody young who's watching here.
Yeah, I understand.
Right. So I was an entrepreneur, but I didn't know what the word entrepreneur was at that point. I just did what people did, which is I got a job. Mm-hmm. My mother had always said, hey, if you go to school, graduate, you could work for General Motors. They had a plant in Janesville, Wisconsin, which was not that far away from where I was raised. And you could get a job in the factory, and it's a union job, and you'd be set for life. And that was what every mother in that area was telling their kids. Mm-hmm. And so I pursued, in my case, I started off as a dishwasher in a pancake house and became a cook, and then a waiter, and then a assistant manager, and became ultimately a manager. And along that way, I realized, wow, this is crazy. Now I'm the manager, and I make less money than the waiters and waitresses because they get paid with tips and they can raise their money, and I'm on straight salary and I can't raise it. So I realized I gotta own my own business. I gotta become my own boss. And so I became an entrepreneur at a very early age. And I don't want anyone to think I'm saying you can't become wealthy as an employee, because you can. If you're Michael Eisner and Disney pays you $70 million a year to run Disney or something, that's a pretty good paycheck. You can scrape by on that if you buy some coupons and get some BOGO offers and whatever. But I just do feel that it is easier to become wealthy as an entrepreneur than it is as an employee.
Mm-hmm. As you step through this now, was there you were a manager working in management, and as you indicated, you kind of compared your salary with some of the employees. What was your next step? How did you step out of that position into the entrepreneurial? What was the first entrepreneurial business that you started?
I started my own restaurant. I leased a restaurant from a guy he was a dry cleaner, and he had this restaurant which he had leased to someone, and it had gone bankrupt. And so he had the space, and so I leased it from him, me and a partner, and it failed. We did miserably and ended up having to give it back to the guy. But that was a learning lesson, and that was the first step on the journey.
Mm-hmm. 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 Was this based off of when you failed? You looked at that business. Was it because of the service, in-house things, or just a bad location, or what were you running into at that time?
Well, there's a lot of factors, but the most important one was I was really stupid. if we're being honest.
Okay.
I was at that point, I was in Raleigh, North Carolina then. I had got approached by a private company, had wooed me away from the restaurant chain I was working for. It was like a sheik from Kuwait who went and bought these big hotels and then renovated them. He'd find these properties with rundown, deferred maintenance. People were cash flow issues, and he'd buy them and remodel them. And I had been working for Howard Johnson, which you and I are old enough to remember. No one else will. They'll have to Google it, right? But in that day, Howard Johnson, they controlled the highway system, which is how we got around to restaurants in those days. So they contact, and he bought a Howard Johnson high-rise in Raleigh. And I got a call. One of the guys I had trained who was working at another of their properties, he was the food and beverage director for one of the Hiltons they had, called me and said, hey, they're looking for a food and beverage director for this Howard Johnson's. And I recommended you. So I flew up, did the interview. They wooed me away with a salary that I thought was just unbelievable, and went up to work up there. Then we decide, my assistant manager and I say, we'll open this restaurant, and we'll open a restaurant consulting business at the same time. And we'll take, so we took an ad in the Wall Street Journal, Gage and Brandstorff Consulting, restaurant consulting. First of all, restaurant they don't even read the Wall Street Journal, but I didn't know that. I thought that would be like the phone would be ringing off the hook. Of course, we never got a single call, but I had quit my job. Jimmy, my partner, said he'd keep his job as the assistant manager, and to give some money coming in, and then I had a little bit of savings, and we had a little bit we put in. He borrowed like some money from his grandmother, and so this restaurant, the only call that came in was the guy who had this restaurant for lease. And he said, I don't need consulting, but I have this restaurant and I'm leasing it out cheap because my guy failed there. And that was in Tarboro, or Keneda, which was by Tarboro, North Carolina. And so we said, okay, we'll lease that restaurant, and then I'll hire my friend who from the Hilton to run the place. So I did. He robbed us blind. Here I was working for a company that had all the best regulations, biz tracking, money tracking, everything. I literally had to do my own P&L every month as a restaurant manager. And we didn't put that in place. And this guy kept saying, oh my God, it's so slow. Nobody's coming in. And we ended up losing it. And then because it was like an hour away. So we were trusting this guy to run it. And when it collapsed, and the guy who leased it to us said, I used to come in here. I'd come in every Friday night to support you guys. And the restaurant was packed. I couldn't understand why you guys couldn't pay the rent. So he just kind of robbed us blind. And I have no excuse. I should have known better. I was hopelessly naive, like taking that ad and thinking we were going to get other restaurants who would want us to consult. And, at that point, why were we hiring a manager? I should have been running the place myself to get it off the ground. So, I share the story so people can see. Right. You can make a lot of stupid mistakes as an entrepreneur, but you can ultimately survive them.
Sure. So you go from this point of kind of struggling, and then you have your big break, and you move on to moving into your public speaking and coaching and counseling and so forth. Tell us how your first big break where you were really successful and saw that you have something to give back.
Well, I got introduced to Amway Corporation when I was 20.
Okay.
And which was before this restaurant, by the way. That's where I made the money to buy to have some extra money. I had got in direct selling. I didn't make any money with Amway. I was a bust. I didn't make any money for the first 5 years, but eventually I figured it out and I made some money. And that was the money I used to, that was my savings that I had that I used for that restaurant. So instead of staying with the thing that was making me money, of course, I thought, well, I know the restaurant business. I should go back in the restaurant business, which was just foolish. And I did that another time in my life, another failed restaurant. because that's all I knew. But I actually became very successful in network marketing, ultimately making an income of more than $1 million a year. I built a team of more than 200,000 people across 50 different countries. And I was a natural for that after struggling for 5 years, right? And learning some lessons and learning how to build a team and the difference between in a restaurant, if the dishwasher won't mop the floor, you just fire him and you hire a new one. In direct selling or network marketing, you're working with an all volunteer army and you tell them they have to do something. They just quit. They don't care. They drop out. So I had to learn to become a leader, to lead a volunteer army.
Yeah. Can I stop you there, Randy? Because I think something's important here that I think our audience needs to know. Everything that you had mentioned prior, your prior experiences and your failures, if you will, there was a certain skill that was being developed that you probably started somewhere after getting out of incarceration that you now have brought to a point with through the Amway, because we all know how network marketing, not everybody understands it, but those that are successful in network marketing, like the DeVos family, et cetera, that there's that certain skill that really propels you from a teamwork leadership standpoint. Where you're kind of developing into that. I wanted to make sure that you mentioned to the audience how you really realized that skill was there, that you had.
For me, the superpower was taking the lesson I learned from Baxter and looking for greatness in other people that maybe they didn't see yet themselves. It was the same, even I became president of the chapter of the Florida Speakers Association, which is from the National Speakers Association, right? And it was like when you were the president, you had to lend them money to the Treasury so they could mail out the newsletter. This is pre-internet, right? So you literally had stamps and envelopes and you mailed a printed monthly newsletter every month. And so if you were out of town doing a speech on the week when they were going to elect the chapter president, there's a good chance you were going to get elected because you weren't there to say no. So I got elected president of the chapter. And I was like, this stuff has to stop. I want us to create a 1-year income buffer. I'm going to raise the price of the meetings, but we're going to bring in higher level speakers. We're going to provide better value. We're going to publish a directory. And so all of the speakers can be listed in the directory, but they're going to pay for that. And we're going to promote it. And then we're going to sell ads in the directory. And then we're going to sell ads in the newsletter. And I had people coming after me with pitchforks and they thought I would destroy the whole thing because it was basically just a glorified Toastmaster. And I'm like, no, this needs to be an organization for people who get paid, for professional speakers. And sure enough, at the end of my term, we paid every debt. We had literally 2 years worth of operating budget. And you know what I did during that time? I did the same thing you just asked about. I'd go to someone, hey, listen, we're having a board of directors meeting after the regular session. I think you would be a good board of director in the future. Would you be willing to sit in on the meeting? And hey, and so I got like 5-6 people that I identified like they could be good for chapter leadership positions in the future. And I groomed them. And so when I left, one became a membership director and one became the newsletter, and one was vice president of membership and on and on. And that's what I did in direct selling. That's what I did in volunteer. I became president of the Chamber of Commerce. I did the same thing there. I just learned like, wow, I'm gonna be a talent scout. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna look for people who have that potential and they don't know it's there yet.
Right. So you do this, and you now are doing public speaking. You're doing or doing training, etc. Tell us, tell the audience how they might find you and some of your speaking engagements, and your what you do from the standpoint of the resources that you provide.
Well, randygage.com. That's my Starfleet command site. Everything's there. My entrepreneur accelerator program called Breakthrough You there's just a link at the top, my podcast, my blog, and of course the books are all on Amazon. I'm extremely excited. The new book just came out a couple days ago. It's called Wealth Without Apology, and it's doing amazing. The pre-sales were over the moon, and it's a different take on money and prosperity, not just money, but the holistic version of prosperity. And it'll get people to think about, why am I not promoting more rapidly? Why am I not growing my wealth? Why am I still trading hours for dollars, or do I have my money working for me? So it's not a money book. I'm not going to tell you to stop buying Starbucks and all of those tropes and cliches. This is a book about how you create a prosperity operating system in your life.
Randy, are you based in Florida, or where are you based out of?
Yeah, I'm based in Miami.
Miami, okay. And that's a real popular area, and a lot going on down there, especially this year and next year, happenings in the area. But are you familiar with Walter Bond?
Yes, I am.
Yes, okay. Walter Bond.
He is a buddy of mine from NSA, from the National Speakers Association. He's up the road from me somewhere.
Yeah, Walter is a good friend of mine also, and a former NBA player, and speaks a lot about that transition. So I was just wondering whether you guys were on somewhat of the same track. I'm a former NBA, ABA player as well, and we have a pretty large network that dials into the public speaking area to see where they may be able to find a career after a career, if you will. So just
telling you, Tins, I have helped so many former athletes, former Miss Americas, former Olympians, former whatever. There's things you got to learn to do this business, right? They think. You got time for a little bonus story for people who want to be speakers, how to do it better?
Let's do it.
Okay. So I'm on a program with a Olympic champion who's got like 5 gold medals. And I speak on the opening keynoter. She speaks after me. Then I had a session later. So I'm still in the green room. And she comes in and we're chatting. Lovely lady. And she says, "Can I get some advice from you? Your audience loved you. You got this standing ovation. I spoke to them. I don't ever get that kind of reaction." And I had to tell her in like a loving, gentle way, "Listen, you're amazing. Your story's amazing. But nobody in the audience can relate to that story. There's no one in the audience who's going to win 5 gold medals in the Olympics. So if you go up there and you tell your story and you just say, 'I did it, you can do it too,' they're just saying, 'Get out of here. Who do you think you're talking to? I'm trying to pay my rent. I'm trying to get enough money for the babysitter. And you're telling me, 'I did it, you can do it too.'" What are the lessons in your story that they can apply in their life or their career, right? And so that's what we got to get that message. There's a lot of other, because people don't understand. Like if you're a professional speaker like me, I'm in Speaker Hall of Fame, been doing this since 91, I think. I know every year there's a new Super Bowl champion who's going to be my competition. There's a new World Series champion who's going to be my competition. There's a new Miss America, a new Miss Universe, a new Mr. World, a new, everything. And 10,000 consultants who are all going to get laid off. They're all going to become professional speakers. And you know what I mean? All the corporate people get laid off. They're all going to become professional speakers. So I coach a lot of them through my Entrepreneur Accelerator, the Breakthrough You thing, showing them like, okay, great. You have this experience. It's amazing. We want to touch on that. We want to build on that, but we got to make it relevant to the audience, because otherwise just spray paint your name on the moon. Nobody hires us because we climbed Mount Everest, or we took our company public and became a billionaire, or we won the NBA championship, or we rescued the children from the burning building, unless we can take those stories and show it how it applies to them.
Right. Well, Randy, I tell you what, it has been a pleasure to have you on the program and hear about your background, your success, and how you took obstacles and turned them into opportunities for success. And now you're giving back to the mass on how to become successful based off and turning those obstacles into opportunities, if you will. So we really appreciate having you on the program, and we'll make sure, hopefully, that there's some listeners out there that will buy your book and look at your website and see where there may be an opportunity to connect with you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, and give my best to Wild Man Walter Bond. All right.
Yeah, and his wife is now a big part of his business out front. In other words, she's always been in the background. Good people. I'll see him in next month.
All right, good. Give him my best.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it, and we will make sure that this podcast gets out there, and the public gets to get a chance to meet Randy Gage.
All right. Thanks for bringing me in, George.
Thank you.
This has been Catch as Catch Can. The game isn't over. Your success story is just getting started. Head to tinsleyspeaks.com for exclusive content, resources, and opportunities. Catch as Catch Can with George Tinsley Sr., a production of Live Stream Editors.